Hi everybody, this is Bonnie Barker with Bonnie Bee Crochet, and today I want to show you how to make the winter white throw. As you can see, this is a much larger throw, and I'm going to go ahead and show you some photos of this right here. For this project, I am recommending you use Universal Yarns Uptown Worsted. This is an anti-pilling 100% acrylic fiber. Each of these has 3.5 ounces or 100 grams of yarn. That equates to 180 yards or 165 meters. This is a medium or a number 4 in the U.S. sizing of yarns. This is also referred to as worsted or Aran weight yarn. The number of skeins that I'll be using will be listed right across the bottom of your screen. I'm also recommending that you have 2 crochet hooks. First, the US size J or 10 or 6.00 millimeter, and then I will be using US size K or 10.5 or 6.50 millimeters for a lot of the popcorn section. So you're going to want to pay close attention as to when I change from various hooks back and forth. And as usual, I'm recommending that you have a pair of sharp scissors and a yarn needle handy. To begin, using the size J or 10 or 6.00 millimeter crochet hook, we're going to start our starting chain with a slip knot, and then we're going to chain 197 chains. Now, before I finish all of these, I want to answer a question that I often get, and that is, can I use the single crochet foundation chain for this project? You can if that's what you prefer, but honestly, if you crochet this nice and loosely, it should not be a problem. Now, if you tend to crochet your chains very tight, I recommend that you go up to a larger size hook, such as the size 10.5, and crochet that starting chain, but remember to go back to your gauge hook, which would be the J for now, or the 10 or 6.00 millimeter when we start our first crocheted row. Another reason I'm not a huge fan of the foundation single crochet for starting this project is we are going to work a perimeter round around the entire project once we get near finishing this, and because of that, all of this chain is going to be covered, and it's a lot easier to do that if you just work a simple chain. For row 1, after crocheting those 197 chains, we're going to work a single crochet in the second chain from the hook, just like that. Now notice I am working in one side of the V's. If you look at the stitch, I'm just going to work in these loops on this side. It's not really necessary to work in the back bump, which some people find better for them, and if that's you, that's fine. But again, when we come around with the perimeter around, we are going to cover up the other 2 loops. So I'm just trying to make this as easy as possible. So from this point, we're just going to work a single crochet in each stitch or in each chain all the way across. At the end of this row, we should have 196 single crochets. So go ahead and work row 1. Okay, now we're going to turn to begin row 2, and rows 2 and 3 will be worked the same way. We will chain 1. We're going to skip the first stitch, and starting in the second stitch, we're going to work single crochets in each stitch all the way across the row, and at the end of the row we will also, okay, show the end of the row. We will also work a stitch in the turning chain right here. So after you work the last stitch, work an additional stitch in that turning chain. And go ahead and work rows 2 and 3 the same way. So after completing the first 3 rows, we are going to work the low back ridge, and we're going to start with a chain 1, and working only in the back loop, we are going to work a slip stitch in each stitch. Notice I did not skip the first stitch. I'm following the pattern as carefully as I can. We're just going to work slip stitch in that back loop. And we're going to do this all the way across the row. Make sure that your slip stitches are not too tight. If you find that they're exceedingly tight, you may want to change to the larger size hook just for this section. But if they're not too tight, you should be fine. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. Okay, I am going to work the last stitch. Even though it says not to work in the turning chain, I'm going to go ahead and work my last slip stitch in the turning chain. It really has no impact on the stitch count either way you do this. So now I'm going to chain 1, and I'm only going to work in the remaining loops of the single crochets, and I'm going to work a single crochet in the remaining loop from 2 rows previous. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you where this is. And if you're not sure where that loop is, you can look to find the single crochets from the previous row, and it's the loop right there. And once you see it, you can see them all the way across. Okay, now as you crochet these single crochets, there should be a ridge. That's the low back ridge, but it's really kind of in the front as we're going here. So you should see this ridge forming in your work. So go ahead and just work those single crochets worked again in the back loop, and this is of the single crochet row from row 3. So go ahead and finish that all the way across. Just for clarity, I want to work the last stitch of the row, which is right here. And if there's any doubt, you can always do a stitch count. You should still have 196 stitches, and this is the way it should look, and you should have this raised section here. Okay, now for row number 6, this is going to be an easy row. Just chain 1, and we are going to turn, skip the first stitch, and we are going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way across, and we will also be working a single crochet in the turning chain at the end of this row, and again thereby maintaining our stitch count of 196 stitches. So go ahead and work that all the way across, and just for the record, this is the back side facing. The raised texture will be the front side of the project. And at the end of row 6, I'm going to work the last single crochet, and I'm going to work into the turning chain as well. All right, so now we're going to turn, and let's take a look at what we have. And we are now going to work row 7, which is row 1 of the cable stitch. We're going to chain 1, and we are going to single crochet in that first single crochet, chain 3. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and we're going to single crochet in that next stitch. Just wanted to show you how that looks. Now we're going to turn, and we're going to work in the 3 chains, and I'm just going to work on one side. Let me just take a look at that. You'll see the V of each of these chains, and we're just going to work on the one side of the V. This is very easy. You don't need to work in the back bumps. That would just overcomplicate this and it actually wouldn't look as good. So single crochet in each of those chains. There are 3 of them. And then a slip stitch in that single crochet. Okay, now we're going to turn again. Once again, we have the front side facing. We're going to pull this cable that we just made down, and the 2 stitches that we skipped, we are going to work single crochets in each of those 2 stitches. And that's what we're going to do all the way across the row. I'll do this for you again. Chain 3, skip the next 2 stitches that haven't been worked in. 1, 2, the next one, work a single crochet. Now we turn to work in the chains, and then we work 1 single crochet in each of those chains, slip stitch in that next stitch, which is a single crochet. Now we can keep turning and turning. We're going to have a curly mess, or what we can do is take the yarn, bring it to the back side again. So you're kind of flipping the other direction, but the yarn is still behind us. And again, pull this down in front so we can see those 2 stitches we skipped, and work a single crochet in each one. I'm going to do this for you one more time. Chain 3, skip 2, single crochet in that next stitch, turn, work 1 single crochet in each of those chains, slip stitch that next stitch. Now I'm going to bring the yarn to the back side like that, twisting it back the other direction, and single crochet in each of those 2 skipped stitches. So go ahead and work this all the way across, and I'll show you how the row ends. I'm going to go ahead and work this last cable with you. Skip the next 2 stitches, and you are going to be working in the turning chain at this point, which is not a problem at all. We're actually going to use that twice, and single crochet in each of those 3 chains, just like we've been doing, slip stitch in that single crochet, and bring the yarn back as we turn, and single crochet in those 2 stitches, and go ahead and single crochet again in that turning chain. Okay, now we're about to begin row number 8. This is also row 2 of the cable stitch. We're going to chain 1, we're going to skip the first stitch, and working in the next single crochet, we're going to work 2 single crochets in that first, or actually it's the second single crochet, and then 1 in the next stitch. And you're going to notice, let me turn, that these are all behind the first cable here. Okay, so now we're going to repeat this all the way across. We're going to work 2 single crochets in the next stitch, and then 1, and this again is where the cable's kind of attached in there, we work 1 single crochet. I'll do that again. 2 single crochets in the next stitch, and then 1 in the next. 2 single crochets in the next stitch, and then 1 in the next. And let me show you what we're doing here. As you're working these single crochets across, you will have 3 single crochets behind each of the cables. Okay, again, we just do that by working 2 in the first stitch behind the cable, and then 1 in the next stitch behind the cable. So go ahead and work that all the way across, and I will show you the end of this row. At the end of this row, we're going to work a single crochet in the turning chain, and I'm going to work it right here. And you should still have 196 stitches. All right, so now we're going to turn, and for row number 9, we're simply going to work a row of single crochets. We're going to chain 1, again skip that first stitch, single crochet in each stitch all the way across, and when we get to the end of the row, we will work a single crochet in the turning chain, thereby maintaining our stitch count of 196 stitches. This is what you should have after completing 9 rows. Now for rows 10 and 11, we are going to repeat rows 4 and 5, which would be the 2 low back ridge rows. I'll go ahead and start you on those, but go ahead and complete both of the rows. I'm going to chain 1, turn, and working in the back loop only, we work slip stitches all the way across for the first of the low back ridge. And then, as you recall, for the second row, we are going to work in the remaining loop, which is right here, and we're going to work single crochets in all of those stitches. And again, stitch count should still be at 196 stitches. Go ahead and finish rows 10 and 11. This is what you should have after completing 11 rows of the pattern. Okay, so now we're going to do something a little different. We're going to turn, chain 1, and for this next row, we are going to increase the number of stitches by 1, and this is how we're going to do that. We're going to start by working a single crochet in the first stitch, and we're going to work a single crochet in each stitch all the way across the row. And when we get to the end of the row, we are, let me go ahead and, there we go, look at it this way. We are also going to work a single crochet in the turning chain as well. So again, work in the first stitch of the row and work an additional single crochet in the turning chain as well, and that way we are going to be increasing to 197 single crochets for row number 12. So go ahead and finish that row. This is what you should have after 12 rows have been completed. Now for rows 13 and 14, we're going to work the arrow stitch. I'm going to work it slightly differently from some of my other designs, so I'm going to try to be as clear as possible. We're first going to chain 2. We're going to skip the first 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the next stitch, we're going to work a treble crochet. Now working behind the treble crochet, we're going to work double crochets in 3 of the stitches that we skipped. This will be the last 3, so we're not going to work in that first stitch. We're going to work in the second stitch that was skipped, the third, and the fourth. Okay, just like that. And we're going to work this all the way across. What I'm going to show you is the repeat from this point on. Since we're not working from the edge, we're going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3 stitches, treble crochet in that next stitch. Working behind the treble crochet, we're going to double crochet in each of the 3 stitches just skipped. I'll do this for you one more time. Skip the next 3 stitches. These are stitches that we haven't used yet. 1, 2, 3. Treble crochet in the next stitch. Working behind that treble, and if you want, you can pull the treble down if you need to. Double crochet in those 3 stitches that we just skipped. So we formed part of the arrow. So go ahead and work this all the way across, and I will show you how the row ends. After working this all the way across the row, we're going to work a double crochet in the turning chain, at the end of the row, and we should still have 197 stitches. Okay, let's go ahead and turn. And this is the second row of the arrow stitch, or this is also row 14 in the design. Go ahead and chain 2. We're going to skip the first 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to work a treble crochet in the next stitch. Now it's very important to note that this is also the stitch that was a treble crochet from the previous row. That's very important. After we do that, we're still not going to work in this first stitch, but we're going to work double crochets in the 3 stitches skipped. And notice that I'm working in front of that treble crochet for this row. And that way the texture will be on the opposite side of the side that we're faced with right now. Okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to skip the next 3 stitches, treble crochet in that next stitch, working in front of that treble. We're going to double crochet in each of the 3 stitches we skipped, and this should be a lot easier to see because you see the 3 stitches grouped together, and that is where you work those double crochets. I'll do this with you one more time. Skip the next 3 stitches, treble crochet in that next stitch, working in front of that treble. We're going to double crochet in each of the 3 stitches that we just skipped. All right, so go ahead and work this all the way across the row. And let me show you the front side facing, and you can see the arrows forming as you go across the row. So I will work this all the way across, and when we get to the end, I will show you how that row ends. At the end of this row, we're going to work a double crochet in the turning chain. All right, let's turn and see what we have here. And this is what you should have after 14 rows. Now for row 15, we're going to chain 1, skip the first stitch, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch all the way across, including the turning chain. Let me go ahead and show that to you. So go ahead and make sure you work an extra stitch, or at least I should say the last stitch of the row in the top of the turning chain. This is what you should have after completing 15 rows. And just to review, you should have 197 single crochets on this row. Now for row number 16, we are going to take that down to 196 stitches, and this is how we're going to do that. We're going to chain 1, we're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch all the way across. However, when you get to the end of the row, do not work in the turning chain. So do not add a stitch at the end in the turning chain, and that will take our stitch count down to 196. All right, so go ahead and do that. Now to start row 17, we are going to begin a stitch called the low front ridge, very similar to the low back ridge, but we are going to work in the front. We're going to start with a chain 1, and starting with that first stitch, we're going to work a slip stitch in each stitch, working only in the front loop. So go ahead and work this all the way across the row. Do not work in the turning chain, just in the single crochets all the way across. Okay, I've worked this all the way across. Even though the pattern says do not work in the turning chain, I'm going to go ahead and say go ahead and work in the turning chain. And the reason is this is not going to affect the stitch count one bit, because the stitch count is really what we do next on row number 18. So let's go ahead and chain 1 and turn. and we're going to only work in the remaining loops. Now this was the turning chain we worked in. We're not going to work in that, but we're just going to work in the remaining loops of each of the single crochets across. So go ahead and work one in all of these, and let me see. Yeah, so we're just going to work in those single crochets, not in the turning chains. So go ahead and work those all the way across the row. And let me show you what this does. This forms a very nice raised ridge, very similar to the low back ridge. So this is the low front ridge. So go ahead and finish row number 18 all the way across. And again, your stitch count should still be 196. And after you complete this row, for rows 19 and 20, we're going to go back and repeat rows 7 and 8, which are these two cable rows. If you need stitch support on how to do those again, look across the bottom, and I'll put the time mark where this cable stitch begins. And so go ahead and work again, finish this row, and then go back and repeat rows 1 and 2 of the cable stitch, which is the same as rows 7 and 8. This is what you should have after completing 20 rows. So again, we just repeated the 2 rows of the cable stitch. Now for rows 21 and 22, we're going to work the low front ridge rows one more time. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to start with a slip stitch. I'm going to start in that first stitch, and we're going to working in the front loop only. Work the low front ridge all the way across. This is the same that we had completed down here, a few rows. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work these slip stitches all the way across, and I'm going to work them only in the actual stitches. I'm not going to work in the turning chain. And then I'm going to chain 1 after I finish that, and we're going to work only in the remaining loops, just like we did a few rows down. Okay, so we're going to work the single crochet in the remaining loop once we come back for the following row, which will be row number 22. And again, your last stitch will be worked in the single crochet. All right, so go ahead and work those 2. And again, you should still have 196 stitches. And then I'll show you what to do after that. This is what you should have after completing 22 rows. Now for the next 2 rows, this is going to be for rows 23 and 24. We are going to chain 1, skip the first stitch, and single crochet in the next stitch, and then each stitch across. And don't forget that when you get to the end of the row, also work an additional stitch in the turning chain as well. So go ahead and do that for rows 23 and 24. This is what you should have after completing 24 rows. Now we're going to begin the diamond pattern, and this may be slightly different from some of the other designs that you may have seen of mine that use this. You can start it in a variety of ways. So let me go ahead and we'll begin this. I'm going to chain 1. We're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. Okay, now we're going to prepare for a front post treble, and we're going to work that 1, 2, 3 rows down. This is actually on row 22 from the pattern, and we're going to work a front post, not on that first one but the second one. Okay, let me go ahead and do that again, because this is where a lot of folks have trouble. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 rows down, and it's the second stitch, not the end stitch, but the next stitch. We're going to work a front post treble crochet. Okay, we're going to get ready for another one, and we're going to skip 4 stitches on this same row 22 way down here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to skip those 4 stitches, and the next stitch we're going to work another front post treble crochet just like that. Now back on the current row, which is row 25, we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. 1, point these out with the hook, 1, 2, and then the next stitch we're going to work a single crochet, and then the next 3 as well, until we have 4 single crochets in a row. Okay, just like that. After we work those 4 stitches, we're going to work another front post treble crochet. You can see where I've joined my yarn, and I'll be hiding that later on. Okay, so I've made my treble crochet, and just like we did before, we're going to skip 4 stitches on this 3 rows below, which is actually row 22, but anyway, 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches we're going to skip, and on the next one we work a front post treble crochet. Now that we have 2 again side by side, we're going to skip 1, 2 stitches behind there, and then again work 4 more single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's pause and take a look. So you can see these trebles are going up and down, up and down, and let's just look again at the stitch count. We skipped the first stitch, single crochet, 1 in each of the next 2. Then we worked a front post treble around the second stitch down here. Then we skipped 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 single crochets, worked another front post treble crochet, and behind these 2 stitches we skipped 2 stitches, and then again 4 single crochets, and then a front post treble worked right next to the stitch, right next to the one that was worked previously, and we skipped 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then another front post treble, and again skip the 2 stitches, 1, 2 behind there, and then 4 single crochet. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row, and I will show you how this row ends. After working this all the way across, we're going to make 1 more front post treble right down here next to where the last one was made. We're going to skip 1 stitch behind the stitch here, and we're going to work our last single crochet in the turning chain just like that. Okay, if your front post trebles do not look even like this, you may need to check to see how many stitches you've skipped down on this row 3 rows below, and it could be that you didn't skip 2 stitches back behind the trebles on the top row. So there are a lot of different ways to go wrong on this foundation row with the treble crochets, but do be sure that you give a quick visual check to make sure that you have completed this row before continuing on. Now for rows 26, 27, and 28, they are all going to be worked the same way. Chain 1, skip the first stitch, and single crochet in the next stitch and in each stitch all the way across. When you come to the end, let's see where it is. Here we go. When you come to the end of the row, we're going to work that last stitch in the turning chain right there. So you will be maintaining 196 single crochet. So go ahead and work those next 3 rows of single crochet. This is, again, rows 26 through 28. This is what you should have after completing 28 rows. And we're going to be focusing more on the diamond section, and they will start to look like diamonds after this row. So we're going to start row 29 with the chain 1. We're going to start with a treble crochet. We're going to skip the end stitch and the next 3 stitches, and then the 4th stitch, which also happens to be above the that was the single crochet above the treble crochet. We're going to work a front post treble crochet right there. Now we're going to skip the 1st stitch and the next stitch, and we're going to work a single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And after we do that, we're going to work another treble crochet down right here. This is going to be right above where the other treble crochet was made. And then I'm going to skip the 4 stitches down here, and we're going to work another treble crochet right above that next treble crochet. This, again, 2 rows down, so that we have a diamond formed like this. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches behind the trebles, 1, 2, because the treble crochets replace those 2 stitches, and then we single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like that. And your stitches should make diamonds, just like so. Let me do this again with you. So we're going to make the next treble. Again, 1, 2 rows down. And I know I'm repeating myself a lot, but I just want to be clear as I teach this. When you make these trebles, make sure that they are above these stitches from the previous trebles. Okay, so we skip 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the next stitch is here, and it is right above where that other treble would be. And again, skip 2, 1, 2 behind the trebles, and then 1 in each of the next 4 stitches. Just like that. Now, if they're not coming out even the way they should, you may be, again, skipping more stitches, or maybe not enough stitches behind the trebles. There can be all sorts of things happening here, but go ahead and work this all the way across. So here's the end of row 29. I'm going to work my last treble around the last stitch, and I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches, single crochet in the last 2 single crochets and in the turning chain, just like that. Now we're ready to go on to rows 30 through 32, which is going to be the same all 3 rows. We're going to chain 1, skip the 1st stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, add in each stitch across, and make sure that you work a single crochet in the turning chain at the end of each of these rows. So go ahead and work the next 3 rows. I also wanted to mention one other thing. I oftentimes hear from other crocheters who are very concerned that the ends of the rows are slightly uneven. I just want to reassure you that you shouldn't worry about that too much unless it's just really, really, really bad. Because at the end of this project, we are going to work a perimeter round, which is going to go around the entire the entire project, and that does cover a lot. It helps to even up a lot of any, inequities in the row ends or the appearance of such. So I just wanted to mention that to ease your mind and as you continue on with this project. Now we're ready to start row 33, still working on the diamonds, and we're going to start with a chain 1. We're going to skip the first stitch and we're going to single crochet in the next 2 stitches. After those 2 single crochets, we're ready to start working the trebles, and we are going to find the single crochet that's right above. So it's 1, 2 single crochets in, 2 or 3 depending on how you view this, but go ahead, it's right above the single crochet that was on top of the other treble, and we're going to work the treble crochet there. Skip those 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the next stitch, which again is right above here. It's more important that you line up where these trebles go in regards to where the stitches are, rather than counting certain numbers, because it's easy to add, mistakenly add stitches here and there. But just make sure that when you anchor these stitches that they are above the other trebles from 2 rows below where you're anchoring that. Okay, so that it looks like a diamond. Back behind here, we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and we're going to single crochet in the next 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so this is what we're going to repeat all the way across the row. We're going to go back and do a treble crochet again, 2 rows down, and make sure that it is on top of the treble crochet that's helping to form this diamond pattern. Okay, and then skip 4 stitches down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and treble in that next stitch. Again, these are the ones that are 2 rows down. On the current row, skip the next 2 single crochets and single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. And again, if it looks a little bit off, go ahead and try to make sure that you are lining things up so that you have something that looks like a diamond. Like if they're a little shifted one direction or another, you probably want to take some stitches out and just make sure that they are lining up before going further. Row 33 ends by working that treble crochet right down here. We're going to skip the last single crochet and we're going to work the last stitch in that turning chain, just like that. So this is how this should look at the end of 33 rows. Now I'm going to give you an additional assignment that's going to widen the diamond area. Let me go ahead and tell you what this is going to look like when you are finished. This is going to be 4 diamonds wide, and in order to do this, you're going to work rows 34 through 54 by repeating rows 26, which is the row here. This is after you complete the row with the trebles. This is when you started doing just the 3 rows with the single crochet. So that's row 26 through 33. So you're going to repeat that 2 times more, and then you're going to go back and repeat rows 26 through 30 once again. So you're going to be adding two and a half diamonds when you're finished. Again, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 diamonds across. Now if you want to follow along with the stitch support starting with row 26, I'll go ahead and put a time mark across the bottom of the screen so you can just back up to that section and watch this again and again, 2.5 times should you have need of that. So go ahead and complete those rows, and then I will show you what I have and we will go further. This is what you should have after completing 54 rows, and let's take particular attention on the diamond section and what I was saying about it being 4 diamonds wide. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last row that we worked was worked with the back side facing and was just a simple row of single crochets all the way across. Now I'm going to give an assignment and I'm going to explain as we go. For rows 55 and 56, we are going to rework the section right here. We're going to work the low front ridge, and I'll start that for you at the beginning here, but we're going to work both rows of the low front ridge. And then for rows 57 and 58, we're going to work 2 rows of the cable stitch. And for rows 59 and 60, we're going to work 2 additional rows of the low front ridge. Now, if you need stitch support for all of this section, I will put a time mark right across the bottom of the screen where you can watch this section. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start this for you, but I'll go ahead and have you do those 6 rows since we've already gone over that. It's been taught once, so you can go back and review that if you need. Okay, so to begin this, we're just going to chain 1, and we are going to skip that first stitch, but working in the front loop only. We're going to work slip stitches all the way across the row, only in the remaining stitches. Now you will have 1 less stitch on the stitch count, but that really doesn't matter because the stitch count is continued by what happens on the remaining loop. And so after you work that all the way across, as you well know, we're going to come back and work those single crochets in the remaining loop. So go ahead and work those 6 rows, and then I'll show you what I have. This is what you should have after completing 60 rows. And the last row that I just worked was the second row of the low front ridge. Let's just take a look at the panel so far. Now this is going to be getting larger, so that I may not be able to show you everything after, you know, all the rows, but let's go ahead and we're going to go on to row number 61. And this row is going to be preparing us for a stitch called the knurl stitch, or the crab stitch, or the reverse single crochet. But before we can do that row, we need to work a row of single crochets. So row 61, we're going to chain 1, skip the first stitch, and we are simply going to work a single crochet in each row all the way across. Okay, now we are going to work row 62, and I'm going to make just a minor adjustment. There's nothing wrong with the written pattern. I'm just going to adjust it slightly. I'm going to chain 1. Now working from left to right, if you're right-handed. If you are left-handed, you would be working from the opposite direction. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to work only in the front loop, and I'm going to work a single crochet but going in the opposite direction. This can be a bit tricky, so I'm going to take it slow, and I am going to skip the first loop and I'm going to start working in the second loop. That's the only adjustment that I'm making to this row, but in doing so, this, I think you'll find out that this is helpful. I'm going to go ahead and just work by poking the hook up into that loop, pull a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. Let me do that again. In the next stitch, we're working. I'm trying to get a good camera angle here. I am poking the hook up to the next loop, pull a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. Let's do that again. Up. And my thumb is holding on to this loop. So let's do this again. Putting the hook up into that loop, pull down, yarn over, and pull through 2. And I'm going to work this all the way across the row, only working in the front loop. Now, one mistake that a lot of seasoned crocheters will make is trying to control how these loops fall. I would encourage you to not worry too much about that. If your thumb is holding on to this loop, I would just let the loops fall as they may. And I believe you'll find that that is the way to go with this stitch. If you try to control it too much, I believe that will be difficult. It will not come out looking as well. And if you need to practice this a little bit, definitely take the time to do it. But this is one of those slow going stitches. But if you work it correctly, I believe it is just one of the most beautiful surface textures that I'm aware of when it comes to crochet, which is why I incorporate it a lot into my designs. Now, one thing that's interesting about this, as you're working this across, be sure again that you're just working in the front loop. When we come back the next row, we're going to work in the remaining loop. This is very similar to using the low front ridge. So we will be working in that loop coming back. And because of that, this row that we work, which would be row 63, is the row that maintains the stitch count. So even if this row is one less on the stitches, it really doesn't matter, because again, this is just surface texture. It's not what maintains our stitch count. So go ahead and work this all the way across, and I'll show you how the row ends. After working this all the way across the row, we're going to work a reverse slip stitch in the turning chain just this way. Going to insert our hook into that front loop of the turning chain and then just pull through both loops just like that. For row 63, we're going to chain 1 and working only in the remaining loops of the single crochets. We're going to work single crochets, a single crochet in each remaining loop all the way across the row. After you complete working row 63, which is the single crochets, go ahead and work rows 64 and 65, which is a repeat of rows 62 and 63. So you will have two beautiful knurl stitches in between. So go ahead and work those, finish this row and repeat them again, and I'll show you what I have. This is how that knurl section should look after you've completed 65 rows. Now for row number 66, we are simply going to turn, chain 1, and skipping that first stitch, we're going to work single crochets in each stitch across, and we are also going to work the last stitch in the turning chain. So go ahead and work row 66. After completing row 66, I have another assignment for you. We're going to work rows 67 through 72, and what we will be doing for that is we're going to be repeating rows 55 through 60 once more. That would be the low front ridge rows 1 and 2, the cable rows 1 and 2, and the low front ridge again rows 1 and 2. So again, rows 67 through 72, repeat rows 55 through 60 one more time. This is what you should have after having completed 72 rows. You can see you've got lots of beautiful texture going here. Now before we continue forward with the fisherman popcorn, we have to do something very important. We need to change from the size J hook to the size K. And let me give you the stats on this. This is the 10.5, or the more important number is 6.50 millimeters. So if you are watching from the UK or other countries outside the US, be sure that you use the millimeter sizing on these hooks, not necessarily the letter or the number here, because they do vary from country to country. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to be starting with row 73. And the first thing we're going to do is chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in that first single crochet. Notice that we're not skipping the stitch right now. Then we're going to chain 1 again. We're going to skip the next stitch, and then we're going to work a popcorn in the next, and we work them as follows. We work 4 single crochets worked in the same space. After that, we're going to pull up a loop. We're going to reinsert the hook into that first of the 4 stitches, and we're going to grab that loop, put it back on the hook, and pull it through, and give it a chain 1, and that should pop like a popcorn, just like that. We're going to skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and do another popcorn, which is 4 single crochets worked in that same space. Pull up the loop, reinsert the hook into that first of the 4 single crochets, grab the loop, and then pull it through and chain 1. Skip a stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip a stitch, and again work a popcorn in the next stitch. And this is what we're going to work all the way across the row. Let me go ahead and finish this one up for you. Insert, pull up the loop, pull it through, and give it a chain. Now when you give this a chain, don't chain really tightly, because we are going to be working in that chain in the row that follows this. And as you work across, let me show you, it should be nice and even like this. Now if you forget to change from the smaller hook, you're going to notice that it's going to be tighter, and it will not bless you. You're going to have to, rework it at some point if you don't remember to change the hooks. And I will say right now that once we complete the popcorn section, I'll tell you when to change back to this size hook. It's really, really a subtle thing, but very important in the overall scheme of how this project is formed. Okay, so, and when you're going across, you're going to need to be careful that you skip a stitch, as I showed you here. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem with your stitch count. And you just want to be careful about that. So go ahead and work this across, and I will show you how the row ends. After working this all the way across the row, we're going to skip that last stitch, and we're going to work a single crochet in the turning chain. You should have a total of 49 popcorns at the end of this row. So for row 74, we're going to turn, chain 1, we're going to skip the first single crochet, we're going to single crochet in that first chain 1 space, which is at the top of the popcorn, chain 1, skip the popcorn, we're going to work in the chain 1 space here in between the popcorn and the single crochet, chain 1, and then again single crochet in the top of the popcorn, chain 1, and then single crochet in that next chain 1 space in between the popcorns. And that's what we're going to work all the way across the row. So to start row number 75, we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the first single crochet, and in that first chain 1 space, all the chain 1 spaces are going to look the same for this row. We're going to work a popcorn. Again, those 4 single crochets, and then go to the first stitch, which is right near the beginning right there, and pull that through to complete the first popcorn. We have that chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and then popcorn in the next space. And that's what we're going to do all the way across the row. Let's go ahead and I'll finish this one. Okay, and I want you to notice something about this row, how the popcorns alternate with the previous row. If your popcorns are not doing that, then something is not right. So whatever you need to do to adjust, if you're not on the same stitch count as I am, you do need to make sure that these popcorns alternate. If you don't do that, it's going to look really strange. Okay, so go ahead and work that all the way across. So after working this all the way across, we're going to skip this last single crochet and single crochet in the turning chain, just like that. And you can see how the popcorn are alternating all the way across the row. Okay, so for row number 76, it's going to be a repeat of row 74, where we chain 1, skip the first single crochet in that next chain 1 space, chain 1, again working only in the chain 1 spaces. We work in that chain 1 of the popcorn, chain 1, and then single crochet in the next chain 1 space, and we work that all the way across the row, just like so. At the end of row 76, we're going to chain 1 and single crochet in the turning chain. Now let's go ahead and turn as we begin row number 77. We are going to chain 1, and we're going to skip that first single crochet in that first chain 1 space, chain 1, and now we're back to the popcorn rows where we work 4 single crochets into the same chain 1 space, pull up a loop, insert our hook into the first of the 4 stitches, and pull that loop through and give it a chain and single crochet in the next space, chain 1, popcorn in the next chain 1 space, and we're back to our popcorn pattern. Let's go ahead and single crochet in the next chain 1 space, and I just wanted you to get a view of how these should be. Again, these are alternating. Make sure that your popcorns are alternating just like these as you go across for row number 77. So this row we're going to work all the way across. We'll skip the last single crochet and single crochet in the turning chain at the end of this row. So after completing row 77, I do have a large assignment for this popcorn section since it's just repeating rows. Okay, we're going to repeat rows 74. That's with the single crochets only. Single crochet and chain 1, 74, 75, 76, and then 77. We're going to repeat these 4 rows a total of 4 times, and then we're going to repeat rows 74 and 75 once again. If you need some stitch help, go ahead and look across the bottom of the screen. I'll put a time mark where row 74 begins, and then you can repeat that a total of 4 times, and then repeat rows 74 and 75 once more. I'll go ahead and work that for you, and then I'll show you what I have. This is what you should have after completing through row number 95. And as I said before, you should have 12 rows with the popcorn, and of course there's a row in between that, but let me count with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And notice how they are alternating throughout. And you may want to even do a quick visual check to make sure that that is the case throughout the entire panel. I really think that's a great idea at the end of every row, but you may want to just go ahead and give it another look. Now there's one other thing that's very important before we go on to row 96. We've been using the size K or 10.5. We're going to go ahead and change back now to the smaller hook, which is the size J or 10 or 6.00 millimeter. This is very, very, very important. So please do that before you go any further. Otherwise, this is not going to look as good, and the stitches that we're going to are going to be oversized. So we're going to go ahead and get that hook in, and then we're going to turn. And this is basically the row that discontinues the popcorn. So what we're going to do, we're going to work a single crochet. Let me go ahead and do that again. We skip the first stitch. We're going to single crochet in the chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in that single crochet in the chain 1, and then in the next stitch, which is right there, and we're going to work that all the way across the row. So as I'm going across, I just want to make sure that I'm very clear on this row 96. And again, I'm going to work it for you a little bit more. This is the top chain of the popcorn. Right here along the side of the popcorn, we put a stitch there. We put a stitch here in the chain 1 space, and then in the single crochet. I just want to be explicitly clear on this because this is very important that as you work this row, you should have 196 stitches at the end. And to be emphatically clear about the end, do not work a single crochet in the turning chain. We merely work in the last stitch, and I will show you that when I get to that point. And this is how it should look with the front side facing. I'm at the end of row 96. I have worked in the top of that chain 1 space on the popcorn, and then I'm going to work this stitch along the side of the popcorn. Do not work in the turning chain. You should have a total of 196 single crochets going forward. Now, if you are off by 1 or 2 stitches, it is not a deal breaker. You may want to go back and see where you've left out a stitch and try to fix it on this row before going forward. But if not, it's easy to add a stitch in here and there, or even decrease a stitch here and there in these rows. It's not going to be a deal breaker, and if the end looks just a little bit off, don't worry about that too excessively, because we are going to work a perimeter round around the entire perimeter, obviously, of this project. And by doing that, that really does, as I like to say, covers a multitude of sins. It covers up a lot of things that you would think would be an issue, but are not going to be later on. Okay, so after that, I'm going to turn. Let me give you a better view. Okay, here we go. So you can see how nice that edging is. So now what we're going to do, we are going to work 2 rows of the low front ridge, 2 rows of the cable stitch, and 2 more rows of the low front ridge. Let me give you the numbers of these rows. This would be for rows 97 to 102. And you're going to repeat rows 55 through 60. Those are the rows that give the instruction for this section. So you're going to work this much on the other side of the cable, but only those 6 rows. If you need stitch support for rows 55 through 60, I'll go ahead and put a little time mark at the bottom of the screen so you can go back and review that. But by now you should be able to work these without getting too much stitch support, because we've done it so many times and we're going to repeat it many times more. So go ahead and work those next 6 rows, and then I'll show you where to go from there. This is what you should have after completing 102 rows. This is the other side of the popcorn. And like I mentioned, you work those 6 rows with the low front ridge, cable crochet, and the low front ridge. Now we're ready to work the center motif, which is the diamond popcorn section. Please notice I'm still using the smaller hook. We're going to use the smaller hook throughout until we get to this popcorn section on the other side, where it's going to be symmetrical when we get to that. Okay, so for row number 103, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in the first 6 single crochets. So we're going to work in that first stitch, in the first 6 stitches. Okay, so let me just verify. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so in the next stitch, we are going to work a popcorn. Okay, so let's go ahead and work our 4 single crochets in that same space for our popcorns. We should know how to do those pretty well at this point. And pull it through, give it a chain. And now what I'm going to do next is going to be the repeat all the way across the row. In the very next stitch, make sure you don't skip a stitch, because we've gotten used to skipping. We're not skipping at this point. So we're going to single crochet in each of the next 7 stitches. That's 6 and 7. Let's just verify. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, make sure that you're not skipping a stitch after that popcorn. I am repeating myself, but I've heard from many people, or not many, but several people who have had trouble with this section, so I'm going to be very deliberate. And I suspect that might be one reason why they may be used to skipping after that. Popcorn, do not skip a stitch after the popcorn in this particular section. Okay, so we single crochet in 7 stitches, and then in the next stitch, we work a popcorn. Make sure I get back into the frame there. So those 4 single crochets, and then we work the popcorn. So that is the repeat all the way across the row. 7 single crochets, 1 in each of the next stitches, and then the popcorn stitch in the next stitch. And again, as we repeat this, do not skip any stitches after that popcorn. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. At the end of row 103, we're going to work single crochets in the remaining 5 stitches, and then we're going to work an additional single crochet in the turning chain. So at the end of this row, we are going to have 197 stitches. You should have a total of 24 popcorns across this row. Now do give a visual check to make sure that all the popcorns have been formed with that chain 1 at the top. I actually went back and did a visual check and found that I did not close up one of the popcorns, so better to find it out now than in the middle of the next row. So after we complete row 103, we're going to turn to go to row 104. We're going to start with the chain 1, and for this row we're going to skip the first stitch, and starting in the second stitch we're going to single crochet in each stitch all the way across. Now as we go or approach the popcorn, we're just going to single crochet in the top where that chain was, and then we return to the single crochets after that. The stitch count should be 197 and should remain that through this particular section. At the end of row 104, we're going to end by working a single crochet in the turning chain. Let's turn. For row 105, we're going to start with the chain 1, skip the first stitch, single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and now we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch, make sure we get the correct single crochet there, give it a chain. We're going to single crochet in the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. And let's go ahead and complete that popcorn. And this is what you are going to work across the row. I'm going to do it again, but I just want you to get a visual. We are making the diamonds. Now, if these diamonds, these popcorn helping to form the diamond, look off as you go across this row, there's a good chance it is off. So make sure that this is perfectly centered before going forward. Now, if there has been a mistake in your stitch count somewhere, adjust it according to this popcorn here. Okay, don't be a legalist and do exactly the number of stitches I am doing, even if the popcorns are not centered. Go ahead and adjust your stitch count if you need to, but make sure that these popcorns are centered. It's very important. After that, we're going to single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. After those 3 stitches, we work a popcorn. Okay, and then single crochet in the next 3 stitches. And then do another popcorn. And that is your repeat across, and I'll show you how this row ends. But do make sure that as you work this across, that these 2 popcorns are centered on the foundation row popcorn, okay? So that needs to look like this. If it doesn't look like that going forward, something is off a little bit. Now, don't worry if this section is a little on the poofier side. If you find that it is very, very wavy in the center, you can actually take your hook size down one more size to a size I or 9 or 5.50 millimeters should you have need. But I'm going to be sticking with the same size that I have here. The size hooks that you use for this project are not written in stone. So if you need to adjust for your personal crocheting style, please do that now. As I come to the end of this row, we're going to single crochet in those next 3 stitches just the way we've been doing. And then we're going to work a single crochet in the turning chain. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 48 popcorn, and you should have a total, this is including the popcorn, 197 stitches. Okay, so for the next row, which is row 106, it is a repeat of row 104. It's where we chain 1. We skip the first stitch, starting in that next stitch. We're going to single crochet in each stitch across, and I will work this for you just so that you get the visual. When you come to the popcorn, we work in the chain 1 of the top of that popcorn. Do not work a stitch here. That would be adding stitches in. And then we work 1 in each of the next 3 single crochets. So in between each popcorn, essentially, you're going to have 3 single crochets. So after working at the top, that chain 1 of that popcorn, and then I work 3 single crochets, and then back to the top of that popcorn. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. Now for row number 107, we're going to chain 1, skip the first stitch. We're going to single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. And once we do that, we're ready to return to the pattern that we're going to work across. We're going to work a popcorn in that next stitch. And let's go ahead and finish that. Now we're going to work single crochets in the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. just like that. Let's pause and take a look at that for just a second. After that popcorn, we're going to work 1 single crochet in that next stitch, and then we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. And then we're going to go back to 5 single crochets, 1 in the next 5 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then popcorn in the next stitch. One single crochet in the next stitch, and then a popcorn in the next stitch. And this is going to be your repeat all the way across the row. Let me go ahead and finish this popcorn, and then I'm going to let you take a better look at what I've done here. So you can see the bottom part of each of these diamonds developing. And again, as you work this across, make sure that visually these are lining up, just as you see here. If they're not, definitely adjust your stitch count. If you need to, make subtle adjustments due to mistakes, you can do that. But just, again, be sure that visually this is the direction, this is the way these popcorn are coming out. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. At the end of row 107, we're going to work single crochets in the last 2 stitches and in the turning chain. So you have 3 single crochets at the very end. And again, please do a visual check that your popcorns are in the same configuration, the bottom half of that diamond. Now I want to give a small assignment for rows 108 through 110. We're going to repeat row 104, which is worked. Let's go ahead and look at the back side. It was with the back side facing, and we're just going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across. And I just want to caution you, just 1 single crochet on each of these popcorns. Don't be adding additional stitches in. So the stitch count is not changing at this point. And for row 105, it is going to be a repeat of what we worked right down here with the popcorns. Every popcorn single crochet in the next 3 stitches, popcorn single crochet in the next 3 stitches, etc. Across the row. But again, it's the same as 105. If you want, if you need additional stitch support for row 105, just look across the bottom of the screen and I will put a time mark where 105 is. So go ahead and repeat rows again, 104 and 105. And then after you do that, repeat row 104 again, which again is worked with the back side, just 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way across. So go ahead and work those 3 rows, and then I'll show you what I have. This is what you should have after completing 110 rows. That sure is a lot of rows, isn't it? All right, so now to begin row number 111, we're going to chain 1. Again, skip that first stitch, and we are going to single crochet in the next 6 stitches. So that's 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the next stitch we're going to work a popcorn. And after that, we are going to single crochet in the next 7 stitches. After those 7 single crochets, we're going to make a popcorn in the next stitch. And let's pause and take a look at how this looks. After you've completed the popcorn in the top, it should look like this. And make sure that it is in between these 2 popcorns. Again, if it doesn't look like that and your numbers are off, don't worry about the number as much as making sure that the popcorn is in its proper space. We can always work the other stitches out. If you have an extra, I'm talking like 1 stitch or 2 stitches. I'm not talking off 5 or 6 stitches, but like if you're off 1 stitch at the beginning of either end, you can always adjust that. All right, so go ahead and work this all the way across. So after working this all the way across, we are going to single crochet in the last 5 stitches. And single crochet in the turning chain. And again, we still have a total of 197 stitches. Go ahead and give it a quick visual check to make sure all of these popcorn diamonds are complete the way they should look. After that, we're going to turn and we're going to go on to row 112. This is the last row of the popcorn. We're going to chain 1, and this is the row that we get back to 196 single crochets, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to skip the first single crochet as usual, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. And just another gentle reminder, when you get to the popcorns, make sure that you're only adding a single crochet into the top. Okay, and then go back to the single crochets right next to them. At the end of this row, do not work in the turning chain. So again, at the end of this row, do not work the turning chain, and that will bring you to 196 stitches. Okay, so after we complete that, I want to give you an additional assignment. We are going to work rows 113 to rows 142. And what we're going to do is we're going to repeat rows 67 through 96. And let me explain what that is. So let me show you what that involves. That involves working 2 rows of the low front ridge, 2 rows of the cable stitch, 2 rows of the low front ridge again. And I'm going to be working them on this side. After you finish those 6 rows, you're going to work all the rows of the popcorn again. And if you need stitch support, you can go back. I will put a time mark across the bottom, and what I will do is I will start from the row over here, which I believe is row, I guess it would be row 67. Go from here all the way through the popcorn if you need to look at that again. If not, just go ahead, and you could probably do this by reading the pattern or from memory. So go ahead and work that section. Again, just to restate, we're working it on this side of the popcorn diamond, and you're going to work these rows and all of the popcorn. So this will be popcorn diamond will be in the center motif, and everything from this point is going to be symmetrical and is going to match what we've already done. So go ahead and complete those rows, and again, if you need stitch support, just look across the bottom of the screen for the time mark that I showed you earlier. I've just completed through row 172, and I just finished the second grouping or panel of the popcorn, and I am going to put a picture right here so that you can see what the entire throw should look like at this point, since it's really hard to work with that because it's gotten so big. But let me just remind you of a couple of things. After working the popcorn stitch with the larger size K hook, you should have changed on row 142 to the size J hook. Okay, so you should be back to your smaller size hook. And row 142 was a repeat of row 96. So if that is helpful. So now let me explain what we're going to do for rows 143 to 160. And I know these big numbers get a little confusing, but let me just give you the numbers. For rows 143 to 160, we're going to repeat rows 55 through 72. Now let me just explain visually what we are going to do. For the rows that I just mentioned, we are going to repeat rows 55 through 72. It's going to be working the 2 rows of the low front ridge, 2 rows of the cable stitch, 2 more rows of the low front ridge, and then we work this section with the single crochet row, the knurl, single crochet in the remaining loop, then a knurl, and then a single crochet, etc. So make sure you follow how many rows to do with that, and then we again do 2 rows of the low front ridge, 2 rows of the cable stitch, and then 2 rows of the low front ridge again. If you have any question, you can always just look at the throw that you have already done and just keep in mind that everything is going to be symmetrical. Each side is going to match on the other side of the popcorn diamond motif. So go ahead and work these rows, and then I will show you what I have and give you the next assignment. So I have just completed through row number 160, which was completing another repeat of this on the edge of the popcorn as I showed you before. Now I'm going to give you another assignment, and believe it or not, we are in the home stretch, so we only have maybe less than a quarter of a panel to go. This is going to be rows 161 through 190. We're going to repeat rows 25 through 54 again, and let me give you a quick view. That would be the panel with the diamond stitches. Is you can look at the diamond section in the other side of your throw, and you can pretty much follow that exact. Okay, so go ahead and finish those diamond rows, and then I will show you the next section that we need to work. This is what you should have after completing 190 rows, which is the other side with the diamond pattern. And just as a review, remember that this diamond pattern is 4 complete diamonds wide. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then you would have worked an additional row of single crochet as part of that section. Now let me go ahead and visually show you what you're going to do next. We are going to return to this section, and let me just show you what you're going to do. I'll explain, and then I'll give you the specific numbers, which may or may not be helpful to you. So we are going to work the low front ridge rows, the cable, low front ridge. Now keep in mind that there are additional single crochet rows in there, and I'm going to have you refer to the pattern for that, and again I'll give you the numbers in a second. The arrow rows, and then again you're going to have some single crochet rows, the low front ridge, and again some single crochet rows, and the cable stitch, and then again the low front ridge, and some single crochet rows following that. So visually you're going to be matching what we did here on the other side of the blanket. And to give you the specifics, where you will work rows 55 through 61 again. Again, that will include the low front ridge, the cable, the low front ridge, and the single crochet row, and then repeat rows 13 and 14, which are the arrow rows. I'll put a link or a little time mark right across the bottom for those arrow rows should you need it. And don't forget that will also include some rows of single crochet after that. And then we're going to repeat rows 55 through 60 one more time, doing the low front ridge cable, a low front ridge, and an additional single crochet row following that. So once you do that, I will explain what we're going to do with the perimeter round. So we are in the home stretch on this. So go ahead and work these rows, and then I will give you instructions on the perimeter round. So after finishing through row 210, we're ready to work the final perimeter round. So what we're going to do is we're going to start in the second stitch and working through both loops. We are going to slip stitch in each stitch all the way across the row, and when you get to the corner we are going to turn and work across the row ends, but I'll show you how to do that. So go ahead right now and just work those slip stitches all the way across. So after working those slip stitches all the way across, I'm going to turn 90 degrees, and now I'm going to be working across the row ends. Okay, I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to work a single crochet in that first row end, just like that. Now what we're going to do going across is we are going to chain one and then single crochet. We're not going to be working in each row end, we're just going to be working a chain one and a single crochet so that this will be even across. Now going across the bottom, or across each end with row ends, I'm going to do this until there are 107 repeats of the chain one and a single crochet. So this is making the spaces that we're going to use for the knotted fringe later. So one strategy you can do is by using stitch markers, you can divide this entire end of the throw into 4 main sections, or 4 even sections. And if you do that, and if you take 100 and actually let's use the number 108, and if you divide that by 4 you get 27. Of course you would just have to work 1 fewer stitches, so you can work that evenly across, and that way if you're working in multiples of 27 instead of 107, it's just a lot easier. Now if when working this across you get a different number, let's say you get 106 or 105 or whatever the number is, it really doesn't matter as long as the stitching that you are working looks even, it's not too tightly pulled. The other important thing is no matter what number you choose on working this across, like I said, the pattern does say 107 of these, so you'll have 107 chain one spaces. But if you do use a different number on one end, make sure that the other end is exactly the same so that they do match when we go to add the fringe. Okay, so go ahead and work this all the way across with the single crochet chain one across the end, and then after you turn you're going to be working again along the very foundation chain. And as you turn to work across this chain, we are going to, let me just show you here, we're going to put our hook through the 2 remaining loops, and we're going to work slip stitches all the way across just like we did at the beginning of this round. And then we're going to turn 90 degrees again, and across the other edge we will work starting with a single crochet, and then work 107 chain one single crochets evenly spaced. After working this all the way around, we will work the last single crochet and then join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, which is the slip stitches that we just completed. All right, so go ahead and work that, and then you're going to fasten off and hide all the loose strands. Now that we've completed the crocheting portion of our throw and we have hidden all of our loose strands, it's time to learn how to make the knotted fringe. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Before we begin to make the fringe, let me show you what you're going to need. You're going to need the yarn, of course. I do highly recommend that you have a very sharp pair of scissors, a pair that's going to actually cut the yarn and not just gnaw on it, because we're going to be cutting a lot of yarn. And the other thing you're going to need is a piece of cardboard or a flat surface of some sort that is about 10.5 inches long, and the pattern is recommended that you have it 10.5 by at least 5 inches wide. And let me show you, if you've got just a simple notebook like this in your home, if you measure it all the way around, you're going to get 22 inches, which is going to produce 11-inch fringe. So I'm going to use this. It's going to be very easy to cut with the opening here. And it's going to give us just the size we need. Maybe even if it's just a little bit bigger than 10.5, it's not a problem as long as you have enough yarn, because we're just going to be trimming in the end, so you can actually trim off any extra length. And I think it's better to have longer than shorter fringe, because it's just easier to adjust as you go. You can always make it shorter, you can't always make it longer. It's just like a haircut. All right, let me go ahead and show you how we're going to cut this. Okay. Let me just go ahead and show you how to begin. But before we do, let me talk a little bit about math. There are 107 chain 1 spaces across the bottom. We're going to use every other chain 1 space. So that means we're going to use 54 chain 1 spaces to attach the tassels. And we're going to multiply that times 2. So you end up with 108. So 108 tassels is what we're going to need. And each of those has 5 strands in it. So rather than do all that multiplication, let's just count to 5, 108 times. So what I like to do as I'm cutting the fringe is I will stack it in, let's say, multiples of 25, kind of like stacking money. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to wind the yarn. Now, when I wind the yarn, I'm not going to pull it really tight. I'm just going to have just a normal tension, and try to be as loose with this as you possibly can. Okay, so that is 5. So that's 1 tassel. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 2. 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 3. 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's 5. So let's go ahead and do 10. 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you can see how I did that. I kind of spaced it out a bit. It's not all bunched in one space. And then so I'm going to cut just right across the top, and I'm holding the yarn on the other side with my hand, my thumb. All right, so I've cut that, and I now have enough yarn for 10 tassels. So I'm going to do that 9 more times, and then I'll have enough for 100 tassels, and then I'll do 8. Make 8 more, so I have 108. Okay, so, and what I can do is you can just stack it and then crisscross it in the stacks as you cut this. It is easy to just go ahead and I think and cut all of it at the same time, but do make sure that as you're doing this that you're cutting it properly, so that you don't cut the yarn that you have left and then need to get more, if that makes sense. Yes, I have done that, so I just want to warn you all, make sure that you cut it to the length that you need. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that fringe, and then I'm going to show you how to attach it. All right, I have my stack of cut fringe. It looks like a little bit of a mess, but it really is neatly organized in stacks of 10. And I just wanted to point out that I did use 2 skeins of yarn for this. I just have a tiny bit left from the second skein. And you can notice that some of it is a little bit wavy, while some of it is very straight. Of course, the yarn on the outside is much straighter than what was on the inside of the skein. Well, don't let that worry you at all. It should have measured the same. And this can easily come out with a handheld steamer. I highly recommend that you invest one. I will try to remember to put a link in the video description below so that you have that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 5 strands. I'll put these back down. Okay, I'm going to try to, let me go ahead and move these. There we go, so that we have a contrasting color behind what I'm doing here. And I'm going to line these up as best I can. Just try to line them up, smooth them out. Now, if you see any knots in the yarn, obviously you're going to want to pull those strands out. Hopefully there aren't going to be any with this brand, or not many. But if you do, make sure that you cut a few extra strands, because you don't want to be using knotted strands for the fringe. Okay, so after I do that, I even it up, and then I'm going to even them up on the bottom as best I can. And I've got my finger in the center, and I'm going to hold it like this. I'm going to come over to my throw, and the very first chain 1 space, I'm going to come from behind. Notice that I have the front side of my work face come from behind. I'm going to put those over the hook, pull them through, yarn over with all the strands, and then pull it through like this, and then gently pull. And this is what the tassel should look like. Okay, so that's 107 to go. Let me get that other grouping of yarn. Here we go. And so then I'm going to take 5 more strands, and I'm going to do that again and again and again until I work every other chain 1 space. So again, I'm going to line these up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, we have about 1 inch to play with that we can trim away once we're done. Fold it, line them up as best we can. I'm holding them there. Now we're going to skip the next chain 1 space, which is here, and then we're going to go to the next chain 1 space, and you can see that they're about 1 inch apart. Maybe not exactly 1 inch, but yeah, it's a ballpark. And then we go ahead and pull the 5 strands down, yarn over, and pull through and tighten it. So you can see they're going to be about this far apart. So go ahead and attach all of those strands. You can just do one side, and then I will demonstrate what to do after that concerning the knotted fringe portion. Okay, so now we're ready to start tying our fringe, but there is one thing that we need to do. Okay, I have attached the fringe on one end, and you can see that the yarn is very wrinkly or, wavy. And we don't want to be tying the fringe when it looks like that. So what I'm going to recommend you do is get a steamer. If you don't have one already, I picked this up from my local Walmart store for about $21, $22. They do have them less expensive and more expensive. And I'll put some links in the video description below for Amazon, where you have quite a selection. And I have used some of these simpler, cheaper ones, and they work great. They don't require this, but they do recommend that you use distilled water. You're going to hear mine hissing and spitting a little bit, and that's because of the minerals in the water. I just put tap water in, but if you put distilled water, it won't do that. It's not going to be a problem for this project, but if you have finer, let's say silk, wools, special fibers in other garments, and you can use this to get the wrinkles out of your clothes. These are just must-have, in my opinion, for the home. But you'd want to use distilled water for the finer fabrics so that you don't hurt them. Anyway, so let's go ahead and let me show you how this works. You see the wrinkleness, or the wrinkly waviness? You can just push the button and the steam comes out. You want to do be careful, because the steam can burn you. So this is not something for a child to play with. And you can see it's already starting to come out a bit. You just have to work it a little bit, let it get a little bit damp from the moisture coming out with the steam. Look at that, you can see that it's already straightened out quite a bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to steam the wrinkles out, and then I'll show you how to knot this. So now to knot the fringe, I'm going to use 2 fingers of my non-dominant hand. I'm going to wrap it around like this and make a knot. Just like this. And I'm going to pull this down gently to about 1 inch. You can just eyeball this. You don't have to use a ruler unless you really want to. So that's approximately 1 inch from where these tassels were joined to this knot. And then I'm going to pull it tightly. I'm going to go to the next tassel. I'm going to take, again, half of the new tassel, 5 threads, and then 5 of what was left from the other one. Again, in the same direction, I'm going to make just a simple knot. And then, again, guesstimating, and you can look at what you did with the first knot and make it about 1 inch. Does not have to be absolutely perfect. Just know that it's not going to be, and you'll be fine. And we're going to do that all the way across. Okay, we're going to, again, 5 strands. You might want to divide it in half. Let me go ahead. There we go. And again, using the finger, 2 fingers, and then wrap it around with a simple knot. Pull it down to where it's about the same length, about 1 inch. And there you go. Now, if you ever don't like the way the knot comes out, just take it out and do it again. It's as simple as that. And then once you have gone all the way across, what you're going to want to do is get, again, your sharp pair of scissors, and you're going to want to trim it. So this is what this knotted fringe will look like. And then once you finish working that all the way across, you can get a pair of scissors and just gently trim. And then what I like to do is just use each of these and can trim, just to try to estimate how much to take off of each tassel. And notice that I am taking a generous amount off. I have, plenty of extra yarn built in so that we can get these nice and even and beautifully trimmed. Well, hope you enjoyed making this winter white throw with me today. If you did, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to post in the comments below. God bless. Bye-bye.